Hey everybody, Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast. It's June 24th, just before 2 p.m. Where has this year gone? Holy moly, we are halfway through 2017. And I can't believe we are on the cusp right here of the 4th of July. Just turned into summer a couple days ago. We had our longest day of the year, right? Isn't that the first day of summer? So from here, it just gets darker earlier. It's going to be some time, obviously, before we start to notice that, but it's crazy that we're on the other end of that at this point. The year just goes so fast. No matter what you conceive in your mind that you want to do, time just keeps rolling it over. It's unbelievable. It goes from when you're a kid where things feel like they go so slow, and then you become an adult and time just seems to move at a different pace than it did when you were younger. I don't know how that works. I mean, our parents probably felt that way, even as we were kids, and it felt like things were going so slow. For them, it must have been going really fast. But yeah, you get to this point, and I'm looking at it, and I'm less than a month away from being 35 years old. 35 years old. I even look at time, and I think about the fact that I've been doing this podcast for, I think, nearly 4 years. I mean, it is crazy. It's unbelievable how fast things go. How fast that time goes. I think this will be number 226 podcasts. I'm actually investigating starting a new podcast. I've already created the cover art, and the idea makes a lot of sense to me. The prep is really easy because it's involved in what my life is already doing, which is reading as much as I possibly can. But I'm thinking about this podcast called The Best Thing I Read Today. Now, it will not necessarily be today, but I like the term. I like the catchiness of it. That if you saw the cover art, if you saw the title, what matters today? If it ends up being 1 a week, if it ends up being 2 or 3 a week, it's certainly not going to be 7 a week, I don't think. But the subject matter of this podcast is pretty much the best thing I read today. It's not me talking about the best thing I read. My idea is literally to use this great equipment I have here, this Shure SM7B mic, this board, this soundproofing down here, just this beautiful sound, which I think is maybe one of the most important parts of a podcast. I mean, you can kind of have some grainy sound, and have the greatest subject matter in the world, and there's just going to be something that turns people off about it, I think. Whereas if you have the greatest sound, you can maybe have subpar subject matter, and people might listen for whatever the reason is, whether they're doing chores. There's a new podcast, I believe, that is as boring as possible, and it's called the Go to Sleep Podcast. So it's someone speaking really monotone and boring and slow, and it tries to make you go to bed. It's got, I think, tens of thousands of downloads just because it serves that one purpose. But I really want to use this equipment, and I wanted to try to hive off a new podcast. It will not replace the one I have, the Mix Minus Podcast. It'll be an addendum, a second one. I just want to see if I've learned something in these 226 episodes that can extend itself to launching a new one. And so what this podcast will be is me literally narrating the best articles that I come across. Now, there's a little bit of a strategy to this, though, because I started working with, I think the first one I narrate is going to be this great article that came out last week or earlier this week from the New York Daily News, and it was going in depth on the famous trade that the Brooklyn Nets made with the Boston Celtics back in 2013. Crazy, only 4 years ago. And it was that famous trade that brought in Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and saw the Nets not hand out a lot in terms of on-the-court players, but had some interesting swap rights with different first-round picks. And the thought in that trade was that the Nets would continue to be a very competitive team for the next handful of years. So if you have swap rights with another team, and the Celtics and Nets the Celtics might be ascending over the years, whereas the Nets would be descending, but it would be a slower descent. So if you have swap rights, it might be just swapping a couple of pick positions, right? It might be swapping the 21 to the 18 or the 17 to the 15. But the Nets decided 1 year in to the experiment to pull the plug on it. They had a 44-win team. They won one round in the playoffs a very exciting playoff round against the Toronto Raptors, won in Game 7 in Toronto, before falling in 5 games to the LeBron James-led, at the time, Miami Heat, even though that series was very competitive as well, more competitive than the 5 games show there. But that ends up being the case. I mean, we saw that in the finals. There were parts of the last 3 games that felt way more competitive this year, in this year's finals, that felt way more competitive than the end result of a 5-game Golden State Warriors win. But the Nets decided after that season to pull the plug. They kept Kevin Garnett, but he had really diminished big time. I mean, somebody who came right out of high school and was like 20 years in almost at this point, he was really diminished. Joints, he was slow. I mean, he pretty much averaged like 6 and 6 or 8 and 8 or something. I mean, just not the kind of numbers you would come to expect from him. And he was not supposed to be the main guy. I mean, he was a really good piece. He was supposed to be almost a caddy for Brook Lopez. He was supposed to provide leadership, which he definitely did. Of course, he provided it to people like Mason Plumlee, who ended up being traded after the Nets made this big push behind Plumlee because he went to the Olympic team and they were kind of building him up as something maybe more than he warranted or ended up being. But the Nets pulled the plug, and by pulling the plug, they became a 20-win team for the most part. I mean, that next year, they did make the playoffs, but it was a playoffs, I think they had 32 wins or something, or maybe not 32. They might have had some more wins, maybe 37 or something. And they did push the Hawks to 6 games, a Hawks team that won 60 games that year. And it was a Hawks team that was really a team that was it was better than the sum of the parts, right? They were just a phenomenal team who was everything you would want from a group of players like that, but they were not a championship level team, but still won 60, and the Nets still took them somewhat to the brink, but then they really pulled the plug. And then by pulling the plug and becoming a 20-win team for a couple of years, those swap rights became out of control. As the Celtics ascended up to this year being a 50-plus win team and becoming a much more competitive team, the swap got out of control to the point where this year the Celtics got the number 1 pick. Now they ended up trading that number 1 pick to Philly for the 3rd pick, and they took Tatum, Jason Tatum, and Philly, of course, took Markelle Fultz. But you can kind of see all of these aspects of the Nets, everything going completely wrong. Everything that can go wrong did. And so this article was just fantastic, reliving the moment, reliving the trade, reliving the feelings, the behind-the-scenes aspects of the Boston veterans who did not necessarily want to be on the Nets, but went all in, and it was really something. So my thought was to read that one first. And I really I'm trying to come up with a strategy for this. A lot of the great long-form articles, they might have an audio piece. So I've been noticing The Atlantic has, in a lot of their articles that I read, they have a professionally narrated version of the articles that they have through SoundCloud. And then that tries to push you to subscribe to some new app. I forget the name of it, but where you can get a lot of these kind of articles and you pay like $6 or $7 a month. But I'm thinking that something like this New York Daily News article, or some of these outlets that don't have audio addendums, that they might be really good to narrate. Because you think of that article, chronology is going to take it out of circulation pretty soon. The article was great for that week, and it had a lot of people talking about it, but then it's gone. And I think making it live a little longer, not that I'm a professional narrator, but I have professional gear and I can read it, and then I'm not going to charge anyone anything for it. I mean, the rights, the copyrights are maybe dubious. Someone could probably go after me, but I don't know if it's different than linking to it or sending a newsletter that links to the article. I'm trying to hit home that it's a great article. I'm trying to narrate it, which there is not an audio complement to this article. And I want to see where it goes. I think it could really do a lot, because a lot of people want to read these trending articles and they just don't have the time, but maybe they have the time to listen to it. But the thing I noticed when I started kind of testing reading this article, it takes a lot of time. It might take 30, 40 minutes to get through it. Then you realize as well that that you start to mess up the longer it goes, and you really need to prep a little more than I was thinking. But I really do want to release this. And then I was thinking, hey, maybe there's a way where I can, during the week, read shorter articles, shorter trending articles that are, no more than 10 paragraphs or 8 paragraphs. But I'm going to come to some strategy for it. But I will be releasing that. Hopefully I can release the first episode this week. I might try to burrow a couple of articles away on a Sunday or on a Saturday when I have time, when my son's napping like now, and then kind of time release those through the week. But I really want to see where it goes. I think it's an interesting thought. I think it fills a void, a niche that is missing right now, where you can professionally narrate articles that don't have that attached to them, that don't have that ability. And even if some of these do have the ability, it's going to be free. And it's a way for me to kind of curate what I'm really liking through the week. And I just think the best thing I read today sounds better than this week. And it allows me to say at any point, today could be today. Who knows when you're listening to it, but that could be really good. Last week was Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all my friends and all my listeners. It's a great day for us. Really fun day. We get into June. It's actually around my dad's birthday as well. My dad's birthday is June 12th, and then we had Father's Day. What would that be? That was June 18th, I think. Well, we were going to be going. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do. I think mothers have a much better time at organizing get-togethers in enough time. Guys are sort of not very organizational, and really the only fathers are my dad, me, and then my brother Mike, who just had his second child. And so we ended up deciding that we would go to Mike's house in Westfield, and we would have a little bit of a barbecue in the afternoon, and then we would come home. We'd get out there, at least from my side, we'd get out there after my son got up from his nap. We got him up a little early, and it's like an hour to Westfield from Sparta. We were there a couple hours, got in our little barbecue burgers, little dessert, and then left sometime after 6 because we got to get back to nap time. Everything becomes like you're living on Mars and you have enough oxygen, to get out to go get some stuff and then get back. I mean, that's sort of, you kind of port from place to place within these defined times, between nap times, between when he needs to eat, between when they need to get changed. And I mean, I know a lot of people would think that with babies, but even when you get up to toddlers, it's like that. And then you have to worry about what are the things I'm going to need to bring to keep them occupied. Will they have stuff there? What will he eat? And, so we did fit it in. It was really good. But we did really something interesting that morning, and it germinated the night before. My wife and I have been talking about the fact that we never get to go out anymore, kind of as a couple. And before we had my son, we would go out once a week, right? You'd go out on the weekend, whether it was Friday or Saturday night. Sometimes you might go out twice. But I think for budgetary reasons, we would tend to go out the one time on the weekend. And a lot of our activities tended to center on this great place in our town of Sparta called the Mohawk House. It's my dream come true as a place. It's really high class, old wooden building, almost looks like an old mansion. And the decor is just great, wood paneled, wood bar, but elegant. I'm not saying like an old style Western or anything. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, brick. A lot of activities, great food, farm to table, and the beer list is, 50 plus beers on tap. And it's always just seeking the great new beer. I mean, when we went last weekend, it had like almost all New Jersey brewers, which is just insane that you could find that many. And it was our dream. We loved it. And we tend to go there on a Friday night or on a Saturday. As once I'd get home, we'd try to get there around 6:30 because they do have music that starts around 9. And that's cool, but it gets so loud you can't even hear yourself think or talk. And it's these people living the dream, playing 80s music. I think there was one that was like Heat with a Chance of 80s, like all these crazy names. You get all the cougars out on the dance floor, all the older women who start dancing. You got to go to the bathroom. You got to walk through them. You have to kind of dance and shimmy through them. It's crazy, but we loved it. And it would just be great. You go there on a Friday and nothing mattered. The world melted before you. You get a drink in, you get a couple drinks in. They have the cool glasses for each kind of beer, and you would just melt into the night. And then you have great food, farm to table food. They have a really good bar menu, which is more of like wings, but it's like gastropub wings. So it might be like wings with an Asian pear glaze, or really good salads, good burgers. They have strange things like water buffalo burgers and mangalitsa, bacon burgers. Mangalitsa are like these crazy looking pigs that have like froze afro hair all over them. It's crazy when you see a picture of them. Just a great place. Awesome. It's only 8 minutes maybe from our house. So once you're done, you just slide up the road and get home, and it was just perfect. We would do it once a week. We loved the place so much. And we got a bunch of good places in town that you can really frequent and have a good run at. But since we've had our son, we just really haven't gotten out at all. We just don't go. We maybe go out on our wedding anniversary, which of course is New Year's Eve, and we'll tend to go and stay out that night, as you might with New Year's Eve. That way we can go to a nice steakhouse, drink to our heart's content, get an Uber back to the hotel, watch the midnight festivities, which for us always included Anderson Cooper and Kathy Griffin. That will no longer be the case after Kathy Griffin did what she did with the fake severed Donald Trump head. But it was just a great night. We'd wake up and then we'd, get home sometime before noon the next day on New Year's Day, and that would be our time. That was pretty much it. Then we'd go out for Valentine's Day typically, and we try to find some time here or there, but we don't go out. I mean, we maybe go out once a quarter, 3-4 times a year, and we decided we got to start pushing this. We got to find a way to do this. Melanie has a friend, coworker, and they have parents who are highly engaged to a point that's almost spectacular. I mean, to a point where it's beyond what I would expect from our parents, but it gets you a little jealous. They're going out on a Sunday night. They're going out on this night with people. They're dropping off their kids at their parents' house. Both sets of parents are very involved. They're dropping them off, going to Philadelphia for the weekend. Just really freedom to the full extent. I'm not looking for that. But we did say, why don't we try to push through and go out once a month? Let's try to up the production from once a quarter to once a month. And we figured I could ask my parents, they can do one. Then Melanie could ask her mom, she could do one. And then they're really only, they're going back and forth, and they're only coming in once every other month. Now they do watch him during the week, so we do really worry about that. We're very sensitive to that, but it's worth asking. And the other thing is we do have a babysitter we can call in. But we start with our parents, because there's something about being home on the weekend. We do want to go out, but we also find that you're not seeing your child a ton during the week. I see him my 1 to 2 hours in the morning before going to work, and then I see him for about a half hour to 45 minutes when I get home, going through the nighttime routine. My wife doesn't really see him at all in the morning, and then sees him for maybe 1 to 2 hours at night. So you kind of see the weekend as a chance to spend full time with him. And you get a little cognizant on the weekend. You get a little sensitive to going out and leaving him with somebody, because you're not seeing him as much in the week. So you find, let's really go all in and spend time with him on the weekend. But that can really eat on itself, and it can go a long time where you have that thinking. And you need to push through it. You need to go out as a couple. It's so important to go out. And so we decided, let's try to do this. I asked my mom. She said she was in for the Saturday right before Father's Day. And we decided, well, first of all, we had a lot of trouble deciding what we were going to do. We were going to go up to the Sussex Miners independent AA baseball team up here. It's about 15 minutes north of us. They play in Augusta, New Jersey, in a really nice old, well, not old, it's probably 20 years old at this point, baseball stadium. And that was going to be what we would anchor our night with. But then the weather looked like it was going to be funky, and we decided, well, we could freelance. Why don't we go out? We'll Uber from here to there and all this. You have this freedom, which you don't usually get, and almost the freedom is paralyzing, because you just want to jam everything in that you want to do in that one night. And really, that's bad for the night. You got to pick something, stick with it, do your best. I always say, once you get a drink in you, the mind goes to bed. It slows down a little bit. And so we decided we'll start the night at Mohawk House, that place I talked about. And we were going to Uber. And then I decided, well, hey, my mom was going to come and watch my son. And then my dad got added to the mix. So both of them were going to come up and take him from about 5:30 until we got home. So I said, oh, why Uber when they're both here? One of them can drive us in my car and drop us off at Mohawk House like we're teenage kids teenage lovebirds, and then we'll Uber back or we'll call them. And so my dad took us down, dropped us off, and then my wife and I are at the bar, and it's like 5:45. It's so weird to have this freedom. Any parent will know this. When you have this freedom, you feel like you've done something wrong. You feel like something terrible has happened. You can't put your mind at bay. You can't slow it down or stop it from just thinking the normal kind of things you think when you're on that train of being a parent, that speeding train that's running away that doesn't even have a conductor on it. And so when you get that chance to slow down and take it all in, it's overwhelming. It's like an ocean before you. It's out of control. And so we're sitting there and Melanie's like, well, what do we do? Should we just get a drink here? We'll go somewhere else. And I said, well, I guess, because we're thinking, hey, it's only 5:45. I mean, if we were going to go to the game, it would start at 7:10. We kind of decided we weren't going to do that anymore. Without a car, that would have been a little tough. No matter where Uber is, for whatever reason, we had a lot of trouble with it that night. There must be some rules I'm missing about where Uber's gone. But we were there and we're just over talking about what are we going to do. And I said, let's just get a drink and then we'll decide. As I say, when you get a drink, everything is better. Everything settles in. The world makes sense. Decisions come before you. It's almost like it's like a microdose of ayahuasca. You see your whole life before you. Everything is right. Especially when you get a good IPA at 8%. I mean, it's good. So we have our drink. And then I said, well, why don't we, because I'm now starved. I purposely didn't eat lunch that day so I could be really hungry to drink as much as I want and to eat as much as I want. So I said, let's get these Asian pear wings. And from that point forward, we just sat there. We talked about everything. It was really nice to kind of catch up as a couple. We kind of went through our lives. Everything was okay, with my son being home with my mom and my dad. It was calm, it was serene. The vibe was great there, other than the band sound checking. I love when these bands are like, well, we're not going on till 9, but we got to do 4 sound checks. And you're like, all right, man, I know you know how to play the open to Welcome to the Jungle, but not now, please. So we're sitting there, we're having a great time. We slowly get through these wings. We keep getting drinks. Then we got these salads we split. We keep getting drinks. And then it got to the point where it's almost 7:38. And so we said, this is great. It doesn't matter. Let your mind wander. And then we just decided we don't have to go out. And so we then got burgers and more drinks. And we just stayed there until 9 or 9:30. And then I tried to Uber. And there was somebody about 15 minutes south around Jefferson. And I had them Ubered, and then I got canceled. And I'm like, what's going on here? I must be missing something. Do people realize where you're going? I thought that was one of the things of Uber was that they don't know where you're going. So they can't really, they can't not pick you up because they don't know where they don't like where you're not going to end up. They can't discriminate against your destination. And I got canceled, and then Melanie tried, and then she got canceled, and it seemed weird. So maybe people can know now where you're going. And I can understand you're caught in a dead end if you come up north to pick us up at the Mohawk House, and then you got to go northeast from there, and then you end up at the top of the mountain in Sparta. You're really to then find a new pickup. You probably got to go south again, so you're kind of wasting gas for what's probably only going to be an $8 or $10 trip. So I don't know. I didn't know you could do that, but apparently it could happen. Maybe it was just, maybe it was a coincidence. I don't even know. But I was a little worried about that because what if we didn't have a ride? So I called my mom and she then said, oh, I'll come pick you up. So we ended up with mom Uber and dad Uber. And so my mom got me. We got home around 9:30 and it was great. But one of the things we hashed over that 3 to 4 hour dinner when we were at the Mohawk House, just sitting at the bar, taking it all in, enjoying it, I had seen in the local newspaper, and we have a great local newspaper called the Sparta Independent. I had seen on the front page this 26-year-old guy who had outfitted this old green school bus into what they're calling now, I hadn't heard of this movement before, but others had when I told them about it. There's apparently an HGTV show about it called the Tiny Houses Movement. And it's people who kind of give up the life that we all aspire to. Well, this might be the life we all aspire to now, but give up the life that we're all expected to do with a stationary home in a suburb, with our job, where everything's static, where we go from home to work to home. We pay for this big house. We stay there. We grow into the house. We grow a family. Everything's static. This tiny homes movement, is pretty much mobile homes in a way. So it's outfitting things into beautiful, as they could be as small as like a, just like a tiny pod that would be hooked to a small sedan. And they build these beautiful homes out of them, and it almost becomes this game to try to take as small a space as possible and have every kind of living quarters available, from eating to sleeping, and to have as many as 4 family members in it. And I had read on this article, this guy, this 26-year-old kid with the big green bus, that he was sort of the star of the show. And he had this just beautifully outfitted bus, and it was just beautiful wood inside. When you're walking inside, the outside of it looked real crappy. I think it's meant to be. It almost looked like a prison bus, like an old prison bus. But when you're walking in it, it's beautiful wood. It feels like a brand new Cape Cod house inside. And it's just airy and open and light. Really, really nice. And he was going to be showing off this tiny home, this bus home, at this tiny houses festival on Father's Day. It was going to be the whole weekend of Father's Day. And so I'm telling Melanie about this. She said, we should totally go. Liam will love it. And I thought to myself, yeah, let's go, because I can talk to the guy. Maybe I can have him on my podcast. It did say he was going to be going to Alaska, which is so awesome. He was going to be going to Alaska the next week. And so I couldn't find contact information for him anywhere online. And so, of course, you have a bunch of drinks on this Saturday night. The world is before you. All decisions make sense. And so we made a plan where we were going to go to this Tiny Houses Festival right at the Omen at 9. We're going to go to the Sparta Diner at 8 o'clock right before, get breakfast. And all of a sudden, we got a plan. We never would have done that if we were just home eating on Saturday night. Everything feels static when you're home. It kind of plays to this tiny homes thing. Having the ability of mobility just opens everything up. It diversifies your portfolio of life. It just makes everything right. And it makes everything new and serendipitous and just beautiful. You never know where you're going to land. Everything's an adventure. You show up in any town and there's a story to be had. You're a different version of yourself when you show up in new places. You're more curious than you are at home. Think about when you're home and you live somewhere for 5-6 years. You come across a thing that was maybe 1 block off of your normal life and you're like, whoa, this was here the whole time? Whereas when you're out and open and you don't have preconceived notions of where you're supposed to be, you find everything. You talk to people at a bar maybe where you don't when you're home. You're interested in other stories. You're curious because you're just uplifted by the travel and the movement. I felt this way when I traveled with the Nets. Just newness and places. And look, that was an upscale way to go. But you just become a different person. I think I've recounted the story when I was on my last road trip with the Nets, what turned out to be my last road trip, unfortunately for me, Minnesota in January. And I had nothing to do. And I knew that it was the end of the trip. And I just went on my own out to like a Hard Rock Cafe. And I started talking to people at the bar. They all ended up being these college kids who were in college for the funerary sciences. They were going to be funeral directors, which is obviously a family business. And I guess Minnesota was the capital for this. And I got to talking. We ended up going out to clubs together. We're talking and we're hanging out. And I never would have had that experience. I never would do that at home. When you're on the road, you're just different. You're more open to experience. And so this really got me interested, and I really wanted to get this guy on, and I was able to talk with him, and he gave me his info, but he never wrote back to me. So I don't know what happened. And, Melanie was saying to me, well, did you reach out again? Did you do this? And I said, Melanie, sometimes you have to know the medium, and you can't take somebody not responding as a negative against your show or your property. Sometimes people just don't want to go on something they think is radio. They might not be, it might make them, they might be shy to it. They might not be open to the experience. They're nervous. And so sometimes they just don't answer back. And you have to kind of take that into consideration at times. And he had told me when I was talking to him, when we went to the Tiny Houses Festival, he had told me that that cover story in the local magazine was actually, or the local newspaper was actually his friend who had just started, this female friend who had just started working for the newspaper. And she did she pitched this freelance assignment to write about it and ended up getting the paper to bite. And so I'm thinking maybe he was so open there because that was his friend and he was being kind of shepherded through the process, the media process. I would have loved to have him because I'm just, to live vicariously through that story, to be 26 again, to be getting on a bus that's run on solar panels, and to go cross country to Alaska. They were going to be going to where the Into the Wild bus was, apparently, or that, I mean, obviously that kid died, so they're not looking to do that, but just the open road, you hope the bus makes it. I mean, geez, can you imagine that? How that thing has to make it through? But the open road, living on this bus, pulling up into towns, not knowing what you're gonna see there, not knowing who you're gonna meet, just taking in the stories. I think, to me, that is a phenomenal podcast, to just go out on the road and to just find people and interview them at the hotel or interview them in the bus. Just stories from the road. There's so much there. You're so curious. It would be so interesting. But yeah, this whole movement, it's amazing to me. Makes me want to do it. Makes me want to get a pod. I mean, Melanie was even saying, we were going around and we were looking at the, they have display units, right, where people can buy these. So it makes sense that at a festival like this, people are going to try to sell. And so you could go through these display pods and just see the perfect manifestation of how these can look, from the bedrooms to how everything is angled to the showers to having a second floor to it with like a really tiny little stairway to get up there in the kitchen. And you're just imagining yourself living in this on the road. It was cool. And she was like, oh, that looks so nice. I could almost live in that. And you think about the fact that you're not, you're not paying a mortgage. You're just going all over the place. And there was a really good New Yorker article a bunch of months back about this, actually. It's called #VanLife, I believe. And there's people who just go around the country living in a van and just go where the road takes them. And some of they do end up with a plan, and they end up trying to make it a business. So, I mean, if you go into the article, you'll see it, but it becomes about Instagram, especially because you want to see the pictures of what they're doing. You want to be in your office, in your static life, which we all live. I'm not speaking down on it, but your static life where you're pretty much going from point A to point B to point A every single day, with some variety, but not a ton. You go on vacation to get that, but they're pretty much vacationing all day, every day, all their life in these vans. And look, the life can get tough there. It's tough being on the road all the time, but it's kind of neat. And so they go out on the road and they turn it into a business. They use Instagram. They frame the perfect shots from the day. They blog about it. They tweet about it. And ultimately you build up a following on this #VanLife thing. You build up a big enough following. A lot of them get to 1 million, 2 million, where you can start getting product placements from outdoor companies. And so you take those perfect shots, you know what the perfect shot is going to be. You start to learn from the intel, and you start to learn from the analytics and the insights what the shots are that get the most reaction, because you really want to sell that beyond just the followers. And it might be looking out the van out on the Pacific Ocean with a surfboard, right? Like you're looking through the van. It's like a perfect shot. But these product placements can be made where these people are getting a lot of money to take the normal pictures they are, but to put a certain product in the picture, not front and center, but in the picture, or to put it in the picture and then to make sure in the description it's written about. And so they make money from doing this, and they have to churn maybe a picture each day that's going to get the promised amount of interactions. And they typically get it because people are sitting in their lives, the static lives. And again, we love our static lives, but we also love the idea of adventure. We love the idea of diversity in life and being in different places all the time. So these Instagram feeds allow you to live vicariously through this van life, through these people going around the country. And you learn that the vans they buy are a certain kind of Volkswagen van, right? And that there's companies who, in trade for having your van fixed at a certain place, you give them product placement. Or it's this whole society of people moving around. It's really neat to me. And going to this pod festival, it's like, wow. I don't know if the whole society can go towards this movement, because it would be kind of crazy if nobody is from anywhere, if there's no static. Like you need a certain amount of static for this percentage of people who live this way to be able to live this way. If we're all just moving place to place, nobody's buying all these homes, which will just sit idle. And there's, what are jobs? I mean, can the country subsist on a bunch of people going around taking pictures in different places of the country? If we're all doing it, it's not that neat. All of a sudden you might get to a place where the static life, #static life, becomes the thing where everybody's moving around so much that you taking a picture of your same, kitchen table every single day is the cool thing that people yearn for. But right now, because static life is the norm, these people living this way are almost like national astronauts going around our country, finding new things, finding niche cultures around the country, going into the mountains one day. You never know where they're going to end up serendipitously. Going to the mountains one day, going to the beach another, going to the Pacific Northwest another, going to Texas. It's kind of cool. And they just make their way around, and they kind of sell their access to this life to people. So the Tiny Homes Festival was awesome. And you just get around. I wish I brought a recorder, because you're talking with all the proprietors of these tiny homes, these pods. I got to talking with one couple from Toronto, and they do this as like weekend warriors. They'll go out and they have 2 kids, I believe, and they kind of renovated this old pod, and they just get in their car and head out on the roads and then go to stay places. It's sort of got a camping vibe to it, right? There was one that was a coffee house on wheels. They didn't know where they were going to end up, in fact. This was their opening gambit for the coffee house, was at this festival. And they were deciding where they were going to port. And it was a beautiful looking coffee house, great coffee. But it was interesting talking to these people to figure out, how do you get your water? Where do you put your waste? How do you measure the water in all these different places you plug into? Is the water too hard? Is the chemistry not right for coffee? And they have to deal with all these things, but it's exciting. It's sort of frontier culture. It's forced frontier culture. And I think a lot of us want that at this point. It's a reaction, a natural reaction to the way we live now. Static is great, but you need some adventure. And a lot of us use our vacations as that adventure, but that's 2 to 3 weeks a year? That 2 to 3 weeks, if it's spaced out correctly, can reinvigorate you to when you get back for up to a month or 2 months, where you feel like you had enough diversity. But it would be cool to get a little more, to be able to get out on the road with your pod and live anywhere it takes you and make money off your Instagram and your online marketing wares and your amateur photography and your filters and what are you using. And it becomes its own cottage industry. It's really cool. So we went to that. Again, the guy did not get back to me. I was really hoping to talk to him because it would just been great. But we got back, got my son to bed, and then went out to my brother's. One of the things that I kind of recommended to my mom, because it's hard to get gifts for people. And so now we got 3 fathers to take care of, me, my brother, my dad. And I said, hey, Mom, I saw, because I'm the deal getter, right? I'm the deal hound. And I saw that the Google Homes were available for $20 off, probably for Father's Day, at Best Buy. So that makes them $109. And even at $129, it's not a bad price. It's actually less than the other competitors. The Amazon Echo is about $180, $179, and then the Apple HomePod will be somewhere around $350. So I'm obviously very embedded in the Amazon Echo world. I have 2 of the full-size ones. I have one of the taps, which are the portable speaker that can run on a charge. It can also run on its base it has. So it can act as an Echo normally, but you can also take it with you when you go out. It needs Wi-Fi to be hooked up to the smart speaker, but you could take it wherever you want and actually use it as a Bluetooth speaker, which is kind of neat. But I thought, I'm a tech person. I really enjoy testing and trying new things. And I told my mom, look, you got 3 fathers here. You're going to get an issue if you get one something and then another thing for someone else. And one's more expensive or one's a better thoughtful gift. Just get 3 of the same thing. It's only $109, and it gets the chance for the 3 fathers to test an experiment and use it on their own. Now, I have every thought that my dad will not be able to use this without a full training, and even with the training, I don't think he'll think to use it, but it's a cool gift to give someone. My brother is an Echo person. He has a full-size Echo, and then I think he has an Echo Dot. Forgot I also have an Echo Dot. But I thought, let's get it. It could be fun. It's a good, useful device to get. It's kind of a neat Father's Day gift, and it's the same for all 3, so no one's going to complain. Not that I'm complaining. And I secretly was really looking forward to testing it myself. So, hey, there's some selfish needs in any request. I'll tell you what, though, we got them. And, at least for me, I put it alongside my my bed on my bedside table, and I absolutely love it. I think all things equal, if I were in the market now and I had the chance to test all 3, first of all, I don't think I would get the HomePod because it looks like it's going to be a truly Apple walled garden product where it's really only giving you their services. It'll probably have Spotify, but There's not even discussion yet if it has Bluetooth, which is key. And that's a major key to the Echo, is that you can Bluetooth content from your phone, from your device to it. I had even at one point tried to Bluetooth the audio from the Apple TV in my main living room, and it acted as like a Bluetooth speaker for the Apple TV, which was kind of neat. It didn't exactly work. It was like too many things trying to hook up, but it was an idea to use. So the Bluetooth is key. So I don't think I would ever get the HomePod, especially at that price. $350 is a lot of money. I know people are going to tell me, audiophiles, that, hey, the sound, the mids are better, the low, the subwoofers are better. I don't know. I don't notice a huge difference. I'm used to listening to things through AirPods, earbuds, and through the main speakers on the phone. So I think when you get a speaker, it's always going to be markedly better. 100-fold, I would say. Even though the speakers on the new iPhone and on the iPad Pros are stereo surround, really good sound. They're great, but I'm just not getting into that. I mean, we're already streaming stuff over the cloud, so I don't know how the fidelity is. I mean, you're not going to get the fidelity of a CD player, right? Or an MP3 player. But I'll tell you what, I have this thing hooked up for a week now, and I think with all things considered, I would probably get the Google Home. This is coming from someone who's been all in on the Amazon Echo. I think the Amazon Echo and Amazon needs a lot of the credit for being the early adopter of this, to have created this product, to be the one who set the standard for it. They have great integrations with partners. SiriusXM just came on board this week, which is really neat, to just be able to say, hey, play Howard Stern, play the Beatles channel, play this, play that. It's really neat to be able to do that. That's kind of a big integration point, and they're really doing things in that space on the integration point of view, getting it embedded as a default service within the speaker without having to use your phone to turn it on. That's a huge deal. It's very Apple, honestly, almost getting with partners and really making a great product, a product that can stand alone in many ways. But the Google Home is supposed to be getting Bluetooth soon. They announced that at the Google I/O conference 2017, a month ago maybe? So that will be key when it gets it. But I'll tell you what, for my setup, the Google Home might be the best. It's already $50 less at retail than the Amazon Echo, at $130 versus $180. That's a big deal. And then when you get the $20 off at $109, you're looking at a $70 difference. That's a really big deal. That's a huge difference. And for my services, I'm a Google person. I realized that when I had this service. So I'm a Google Music All Access person. By being a Google Music All Access, you get YouTube Red. You get YouTube without ads, which is kind of cool as well. I'm a Google Maps person. Even as Apple Maps has gotten better, I still use Google Maps. And the Google search engine is just far superior. It always has been. I think the Amazon Echo has Bing, and I'm not sure what the Apple HomePod will have. But for my money, you're not going to beat the Google search engine. Now, I know a lot of people don't use search engines as much. From what I've heard, millennials don't really use it. But I've always been a search engine person. I grew up in that society where you ask a search engine to algorithmically tell you the answer you need. There's this whole idea that people use social media to tell them to recommend. You use Yelp, you use crowdsourced information to tell you. I still believe in the algorithms to tell me the kinds of answers I need to my questions. So when I've been using this, it's seamless for me. As a Google Music user, having that embedded service in the speaker is fantastic. I can tell it to play podcasts because in the Android environment, podcasts are in the Google Music app. They're not in iOS yet. Again, on my devices, I use Overcast as my podcast listening service. But to tell the device to play a podcast and it uses its embedded service, that's fantastic. It has integrations with other services through the Google Cast protocol. As I said, Bluetooth will be coming, so you'll be able to play anything. But Google Cast has Spotify, and it has TuneIn, and it has a bunch of different services. I think even my second favorite podcast app is Pocket Casts. And the reason I like that one, I had that before Overcast, but the good thing with Pocket Cast is it's on all the different environments, from Android to iOS to Windows to computer. It's on all these different things. Now you have to pay to be on all these different things, but on top of it, it's not only interoperable across all these systems, but it has the best features of Overcast that I love: the Smart Speed and the Smart Boost. It has that, and it does a really good job with it. So that has castability. But I actually tried today, before coming on the podcast. I told the speaker, you got to say, "Hey Google," or "Okay Google," and I told it to play a certain episode of the Bill Simmons podcast. Now maybe Echo can do it. I'm not sure of HomePod. I'm not sure how podcasts are going to come into play there. You would hope they do, because Apple should be pushing harder on its podcast app than it does. Actually, it was announced that the new iOS, it gives you better podcast analytics. It'll actually tell you subscribers, I believe, and how long people listen in your episode. That will either be very good or very bad news to certain people. The illusion, the cloak will be lifted, if you will. But I told this speaker, I said, play the Bill Simmons podcast with Will Ferrell. And it said, picking up where you last left off, because I had told it last week to play the most recent episode, and it was Will Ferrell. And I wanted to try, because you can always tell these speakers play so-and-so podcast, and they'll play the most recent one. It's hard to get to older ones, though, I think. Maybe I haven't tried it in others, but I thought to try it here today. And it picked it up right off with where I left it off, towards the beginning. So that was kind of neat. But when I'm talking to it, it's the best speaker for me as a Google Services user. It really is the best. And when it gets the Bluetooth, it's going to be a really big deal. I trust the search engine much more. When I'm asking it questions, it gives me the answer. When I talk to it for music, for podcasts, it's service I use, so it's embedded in the service. It's fantastic. For maps, that's the map service I use. Now, I know the Echo, you can say, what's my commute like? And I don't know what services it's using right off the bat. With Google, I know it's Google Maps, and it's the Google Maps I use constantly on my phone. So I think, all things considered, I would probably go Google Home. The price, the proximity to the services I use, and it's not a bad looking thing. I mean, it's more, it's a little fatter, wider than the Echo is, which is very cylindrical and tall, but it's a really good little service. Another little thing I've been doing, I had an old iPod. Most of us have these old iPods sitting around. I had an iPod for, I don't know how long ago I got it. I probably got it pre-iPhone, so it's probably 10 years old at this point. But the iPods, the normal iPods, haven't moved up in design very much. So it's the old click wheel iPod, and I used to have a Bose speaker with it, which you could sit the iPod on it, and it would play your songs and whatever. But I kind of have it lying fallow in my house, and I decided the other day, maybe 2 weeks ago, I decided, hey, let me see if I could hook that up, and let me maybe use that as my night device. So when I go to bed at night, I enjoy listening to something. Before, when the iPhone had a headphone speaker or a headphone jack, I would be able to plug my iPhone in and then listen to things on the headphone jack, and I'd be fine. But now that you don't have the headphone jack and you just have the single lightning jack, you have to give that to charging, because that's when we mostly charge our phones, is at night. And I don't want to buy a splitter or an adapter so that I can do both. It's more money getting thrown into the pit just for my nighttime activities. And I obviously have the AirPods, but I don't feel comfortable sleeping with those. Last night I did actually fall asleep with them, and they didn't come out of my ears the whole night, which was interesting. But I fell asleep with them not by design. I was watching one of the newer episodes, or maybe second episode of season 4 of Silicon Valley, the best comedy on television. I can't tell you enough. Watch Silicon Valley. It is so good that it has me laughing out loud at least twice an episode. I don't laugh out loud at things anymore in comedy. This show just has it. It has, maybe it's my personality, maybe it's tech, business, Silicon Valley, all that. It is the best. I can't tell you enough. Watch it. It's only 30-minute episodes, and I think the new season's only 10, and that might be the most per season it has. But Mike Judge is the creator of it, the writer, the old Beavis and Butthead guy, which was, when I was a little kid, that was the first thing I laughed out loud at as hard as anything I ever have before. So maybe it's Mike Judge that gets me. But I think he gets a lot of people. Watch Silicon Valley, though. You will fall over laughing. That's important to do sometimes. But I'm watching it. I had my AirPods in. I fell asleep. and they stayed there the whole night. It was very interesting that happened, but I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't want to get lost. I don't want them to break. They're such a premium product at $160. I'm not comfortable doing it. They would make sense as one. I'm just not comfortable, honestly, doing it. And the other piece is you have to charge them. So if you fall asleep with them in your ears, the charge will run out overnight. And I like to use them to work out in the morning. And so if I wake right up and I have to charge them and then go to the gym, and they should actually charge in time, but I don't know, it's a lot to think about. So I decided, hey, let me see if I can rejuvenate this old iPod, this old black iPod. And it's been a really neat experiment because I have all this music on from that point in my life, right? So it was probably 2011 was maybe the last time I ever uploaded something to this iPod. So it's that and anything before in my whole music evolution. And I love just having this device that has a scarcity of songs, has a lot of songs, but it's not cloud-based. There's no outside connection to it. All the songs that are there. They're on the device. And I like going through and remembering old artists that I would listen to, remembering, coming across, listening to the Get Up Kids, listening to Rolling Stones, listening to all these different older albums of bands I love. It's been really neat to kind of use that at night and to listen to that. And the other funny thing is I hooked it into my computer and I would manually download podcasts the old way you used to have to get podcasts. And so I would transfer a couple of episodes from The Vertical with Adrian Wojnarowski. I'd upload some WTF. I would upload some Joe Rogans. And I just had a handful of podcasts episodes on this device. And so each night I just play something and I fall asleep. I don't worry if with podcasts, one of the issues is you just don't, you're not happy just letting a podcast go. If it's something you like listening to, you want to hear the whole thing. You want to start it and end it on your own terms. You don't want to fall asleep and then the episode runs out and it's gone from your device unless you get it back. You got to remember where you fell asleep with it, all this. That's a weird psychological thing with podcasts. It's not like radio where you just have it on. Who cares if you fall asleep? That episode or that TV show or that radio show where people are calling into the host and he's just trying to get people through the night, or she is just trying to get people through the night. It's not a premium thing that you need to have. You fall asleep, it's passive, it's not active. And that's how it is with podcasts. So I like the idea of each week loading a bunch of podcast episodes to this device, falling asleep, and they're only existing in that environment on that old device. It's been kind of a neat thing. It's been a way to bring it back. It's very similar to what I try to do with the Kindle. I have so many books in queue that I have to read, and I just never get to them because I have so many current events, newspapers, magazines to get through each week that the books just get short shrift. You never get to them. There's always new magazines. There's always new articles coming out, and I just don't get to them, and I want to get to them. Reading books are so important. It's just so important. It gives you a long view you can't get even in the longest form article. And they're just always waiting there. You don't have a need to finish it because a new one's not coming out. So I probably have 35 to 40 books in queue that I've bought over the last few years, and I'm just not making a dent. I'm probably getting through one book every 4 months. It's not good. So what I've done, and I learned this from my friend Joshua Jacobs, he tries to read every day for 30 minutes, a book, right? So what I decided was I'm going to read my book at bedtime. It's better on the eyes with the Kindle. You can get through a certain amount. It makes you more tired as well. And you don't feel like you're trying to keep up with the article Joneses. You're just reading your book. And so you make a little bit of a dent each week. And you always know you're keeping a connection to the book. I got to get through books. I'm almost done with the Warren Buffett book on audiobook, the Snowball book. It's a great book to read. But I got to get through actual books. And so I figure if I can commit to it, if it's my nighttime. So once I'm in bed, I'm not reading anything except Kindle. Better for your eyes, better for your vibe, keeps you connected to your books. So I've been doing that. So kind of my Kindle and my iPod, which are sort of the older iterations of where we are now with devices, right? Everything is cloud-based. Everything's iPhone, iPad, tablet, phone. The old purpose-built reading and listening devices are kind of my nighttime thing. And I'm bringing them back. I'm bringing them back into play. Really kind of a fun thing. And that's actually one of the issues with, if I go back for a second to the smart speakers. There was a really good article in The Verge by Casey Newton about about the smart speakers and which one you choose. And it really comes down to the services you use. For me, as I said, the Google Home makes sense because I'm a very Google-based person. The Amazon Echo made sense because it was first on the market and it's been really good. And for the most part, I've been able to do everything I need with the device. My son loves it as well. We have to say goodnight to all the Echoes and now the Google. He likes saying it, saying the word to get them to turn on and then saying goodnight. But the one issue with them are things like on-demand content. On-demand content is how most people listen to things now. You're listening to your podcasts. And as I said, you want to start a podcast. You want to pick it up where you last left off. You want to finish the whole episode. It's not like radio where you don't care where you drop in and drop out. And it's not passive. It's active on-demand listening. Much like Netflix is for TV or Hulu is for TV. You start them, you want to finish them. It's not like you're channel surfing and just ending up at something. Who cares where you are in it? With the on-demand content, you want to start it and you want to finish it. And that's one of the issues with these devices, with these smart speakers, is that if I tell it, hey, play the latest Bill Simmons, I can get like 10 minutes into that while I'm folding laundry or while I'm doing the dishes, if I have the smart speaker there. But then when it's done, when you then want to pick back up on the episode, you're not picking up on it from anywhere. The podcast app I use is Overcast. So a lot of times I end up just Bluetoothing to the Echo so that I can always keep my placement in the episodes. That's one of the issues with these speakers is there's no way behind the scenes to keep track of where you are in the things you were listening to. And that's a difficult thing because that's the only way I listen. Even though it got Sirius XM integration, I listen to Howard Stern Show like a podcast. I'm 6 or 7 episodes behind. I have them stored on the device on demand and I listen to them as I go. To be able to say, hey, hey Alexa, play the Howard Stern Show, it's just going to drop you in wherever it is, but that's counter to the way I listen to the show. So it's great, but it also is not aligned with the way I do things. And that's an issue. Same thing with music. I can't think off the top of my head to tell it to play a certain thing. I guess you could tell it to shuffle your whole library, but I can only do that on the Google device because that's the default embedded service in it. I've actually not even tried that. I hope it does work. But with an Amazon, it's like a lot of times I end up just going, play Pandora Today's Hits. And Today's Hits aren't even my favorite thing, but it's the only thing I could think of to say. It's not like I'm saying, oh, play this artist or this. A lot of times I want to look in my library of music and then it jogs as I'm going through the chronology there. Something jogs and I go, oh yeah, I could listen to that. So that's where these smart speakers have some issue, or on-demand content, and then recognition of what you actually want to listen to. So you just default into saying the same thing. It's kind of it's a difficult thing, and I don't know how any of them bridge that divide unless they're able to get integration with the exact podcast services you use. That would be good if Apple could do that. That would be good if Google could do that. But the issue, again, is Google. I'm an iOS mobile user. So I have Google All Access Music on my phone, but it doesn't have podcasts on iOS yet. And I don't want to use it as my podcast catcher because I love Overcast. It's the superior platform for me because of the Smart Boost and the Smart Speed. So you're always running into these little conundrums, these little conflicts between the different things. You do the best you can to get the most percentage of your use out of it. But that is an issue. On-demand is an issue. Your phone ends up being the ultimate decider on where you are in things. And it's the thing that keeps track. It's the bookmark of where you are in episodes, in Sirius, in articles. And that's a hard thing. It's very difficult. So we are coming up on the 4th of July. I have off July 6th to July 12th. We'll be going up to my summer home in the Thousand Islands for some part of that time. But this is one of those years where July 4th falls on a Tuesday, which is fantastic because you're going to get the Monday. No one's going to make you go to work on Monday. Watch me say that and then it happens. But that is a big deal. Now, the one thing I'm trying to figure out is I'd love to take a little trip with my wife and son somewhere from maybe that Saturday the 1st until Monday the 3rd, and then come back in on the 3rd and then stay at home through the 4th. But I don't know where to go. Last year when we had a little more time and my summer home trip fell through, we went up to Burlington and it was a fantastic trip. The difficulty with planning something for the 4th of July is the premium pricing because of the holiday aspect. So I'm looking at Burlington, and it's like 3 or 4 times as much as I paid last year to go a week later. So it's hard to stomach that. I would love to go, but it's also quite a trip for 2 days. And a lot of what I do is I'll look at a Google map, and I'll pick a radius of maybe 200 miles around our home, probably north. I'll make the radius more north around New York State, around the 3 corners of PA, New Jersey, and New York. And I'll do bed and breakfast, hotel, and you just see things that pop up. But it's really hard to decide where to go or what to do. And you just are so fearful of picking something and it's a dud. That's what I don't want to happen. So I've been trying. I'm looking. I'd love a great bread and breakfast that really works for my family and that has stuff for us to do during the day. It's adventurous. It's almost like these tiny home pod people. That would be kind of neat to do. But we're trying to figure it out. And if anyone has any thoughts, let me know, because I'm looking out there, and I just can't find something yet. And we're only a week away from the ultimate time. It would be a week from today that we'd be on our way somewhere if we're going to do that. And I just love the idea of the adventure. I get that little tiny homes, tiny houses aspect to life. Well, why don't we call it there? And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to try to knock out the first episode of that other podcast I'm working on, and hope that works out well. Boy, if it dwarfs my podcast, it's going to be a bummer for me, but it'll also be a positive. You can learn from it, and you have something really blowing up the rankings and doing well. So we'll see. Thanks, folks. I'll talk to you later.